And we are live. Hello,
Yeah.
everybody, to another episode of FreudenFreude, where we bring you content to make you grow as a person and as a leader.
Yes. And thank you, everybody. My name is Sandra Corona.
I am
And
Claudia. I'm Claudia. I am Claudia Cimenti. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and we are coaches.
Coaches.
Yeah.
Today is going to be
Someday.
one of those days, people. Okay,
Yes,
but let's
yes.
go about it. So I do work with entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, as well as their teams in tech and beyond.
And I work with expat leaders, with young professionals and neurodiverse professionals as well.
One of these days, you've got to figure it out. Okay. Every week we get some variation of it, and eventually it's going to just click together. So let's get started. If you allow me, let me just say what kind of a point was that I wanted to make about today's topic, which is how much do I know about this person? When we speak about our impressions of people and what lens, the first impressions we have, how we could imagine the context and situation of that person to be, that often says much more about us than it says about the person. Okay, so we will touch on this much more. So a lot of these assumptions that are mine and or Sandra's or some fictitious persons. In no way or form are we here to judge, to pass judgment in any kind of form, to label people or anything like that, right? These are just discussions, and I hope that it will be understood with the intention and that it is given, because we do judge people, sometimes based on very little information. And we want to explore a little bit what role culture can play in all this. Okay, so again, we are not here to stereotype or label people. If it comes across as such, it's just my personal opinion. And I would assume, Sandra, that you agree that it would just be your personal opinion, right?
That is correct. I take ownership of my own opinions, correct.
Okay. So let's take it. Let's take that as the starting point of today's show.
Yeah. Yes.
So what you suggested this topic actually at the very onset. What triggered this desire to talk about this?
Wow. So about 3 weeks ago, it was very late at night. I couldn't sleep. And I was watching YouTube like everybody else, that has trouble sleeping. And I found this video that caught my attention. And it's I like to watch Ring videos. Ring is a company in the US that has those cameras. You ring the doorbell and immediately it starts recording whoever is in your front door, so that any events that happen, you have something to use against or in favor. And mostly it's about you being able to see who's at your front door. Anyways, the video, you can see that it's late at night, and there's this lady walking towards the front of a house, and she is not there to visit anybody, but she takes interest on a bike. She is grabbing the bike, and at first impression, as humans, we take it that somebody taking something that belongs to you, something that you worked for, your property, is a violation of your rights. So we immediately jump into this protective mode to see somebody that is doing that as somebody bad, as somebody that has no values, as somebody that is dangerous and that deserves to be in custody or some kind of police protection of some kind, right? She shouldn't be on the streets, bottom line. And we demonize, in a sort of a way, the personality of that person without having any knowledge of who this person was before, 5 minutes before, 6 months before, who she is outside of the camera, right? And how she behaves or anything, nothing. We just are judging her for her actions.
We take one split second evidence of behavior, right, and very often it deteriorates into a judgment about the person.
Correct.
Right. We don't know anything, but we immediately make kind of these moral judgments about the person as a whole. Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. And it also serves us for the purpose of saving space in our brain disk, right? It just immediately puts that person in one space and boom, we're done. There's nothing more to discuss. Hopefully, let's say that based on what I have been working on and you and I discussing and the whole purpose of FreudenFreude, it's about looking beyond of just what you see, right? There's more to the person. I know that people, when you read those comments, these comments, savage, they were tearing the person apart. But something in me told me that there was something beyond what I was looking at. There was something more. And I started looking and looking. I probably saw the video like 4 times. And keep in mind, it was like around 1 o'clock in the morning. And we had just had dinner with some, I'm not going to lie, with some wine. So keep that in mind, okay? Because this is going to be very important. It is part of biases, okay? And so I started looking at the person. I thought, this is not something right. Let me show you. Let me give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about this person. Let me see. Where's the share?
Your co-host, you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, I'm looking at here. I can't remember how to share. Can you believe that?
There should be a green share screen button towards the bottom.
Ah, yes. Oh my God, I had totally forgotten. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Technology people, yes.
Yes. Okay. So here's the person. Can you see her right here? And she's looking towards the camera and everything else. And I hope that I can let you guys see here. And look at what you see. She has good clothes. The hair is probably just messy, but it's still looking good. And just to give it a little bit of fast forward for people, you're going to eventually see that she has a wedding ring. Sorry for that. Look at the wedding. It's a wedding ring. Okay. I think that's more than enough. Let me stop sharing. Now, the person, to me, when I looked closer to her, just made me think of an entire story about her. And I thought, this is not a junkie. This is not a person that is an alcoholic of years. Let's put it that way. She's just a recent person. So I just started creating this whole image about her. And I thought, looks like a very good wedding ring. And I started realizing how our biases start playing into judging a person. We go into the halo effect. Some people went into the reverse halo effect, and other people went into the halo effect. Me, I'm not very sure where I went. All I know is that I just saw something beyond just taking a bike. I saw somebody, I saw a human that was going through something. What is that this person was going through? I have no idea. Did she have a right to take the property? No, it does not justify it.
Right. And I think that here I think it's helpful to always try to give the benefit of the doubt. knowing and being aware that we don't know. We don't know. I mean, you just don't know what an emergency could have been. And she could have come the next morning with the bike and $500 and a huge apology. But yes. I really had to, my car broke down. I really had to get over there because my kid is standing in front of the school waiting for me. Something like that. You never know. And so, but kudos on picking up on these details about her, still being put together, that you were at least in tune enough to notice some incongruency with her appearance and her behavior. And but it goes again to show how just like a few seconds like that of just like a glimpse into a situation creates this sense of truth, the sense of certainty about what is happening, and it can be very strong. It can be very strong because all these rules that we have in our heads, in our the ones that jump through conclusion, right? And I think psychologists call it the adaptive subconscious or unconscious. And it's kind of like you get this little bit and you have all these if-then rules in your head. If you see something even remotely like this, then, if you see somebody taking a bike, it's a thief and it's a bad person. Right. If you see somebody who's dirty, it's probably a homeless person. Not everybody who has mud and whatever on their clothes is a homeless person. But, it's kind of this algorithmic engine that is has been trained on culture, what is commonly expected or in the common vulgarized knowledge of that we live in, our own personal experience and so on. We have these if-then rules, and they are helpful to us most of the time because they help us to make these literally split-second decision that sometimes can be very helpful to us. Because our brain can also not always, for every little thing, go through this elaborate pros and cons and critical thinking and stuff like that. We function on these if-then things all day long.
Right.
But sometimes it's counterproductive. Sometimes it's counterproductive to use these shortcut kind of pre-made decisions, right?
Right. Because they can also go against us. They can, like a split second. There's just to mention it really quickly, and this is something very depressing that is happening, right? One of them being making the fascist sign. It's Hitler. Okay, there was this generation, I think it was like a 2022 class something, and they all decided that they were going to do this Hitler sign. It was a split second because they were taking the class picture doing that, okay? And just one of the 32 kids that were graduating in that class, only one had that split second decision to say, I'm going to listen to my rational brain that it's telling me all red flags to say, don't do it. And he listened. He listened to his intuition, which is something also that helps you in those split seconds to make the right or the wrong decision, right? Yeah. All of those children in that picture, they were all suspended and they had, I don't know how many, fines and God knows how many other things, except for him. And they asked him, why didn't you do it? And he said, because I know the difference between right and wrong. Yeah. That's it. And it saves you time.
Right, definitely. I mean, we have these split second decisions that we jump to conclusions to. Intuition is more like this gut level feel that something isn't quite right,
Mhm.
and maybe that was even what triggered you to take a closer look at that lady in that picture. Maybe
Yes,
there was something there that just wasn't right, and
correct.
it just made you think about it more. And the other one
Yeah.
is really to think about it consciously, to involve our neofrontal cortex and really look and be very cognitive about it, and pros and cons and really observations, and go into this critical thinking kind of mode, right? So in any case, I think that in rough terms, if we jump to conclusions, it's not always bad, but it's also not always good. And I think that the more we become aware that we are actually even jumping to conclusions, that we have these knee-jerk reactions, if
Mhm.
we have more awareness of our own thing that we do this, then we can decide, does this feel
Yes.
right? Is this really cognitively, is this really what I think?
Mhm.
And just stopping that 3 seconds to really like assess before you then commit to whatever, still short decision you took, because not everything requires critical thinking of, and we sleep over it 3 nights and we think about it, and we draw stuff on paper. It's not always a decision like
It's
that,
not that
right?
critical. Yeah, no,
But it's
exactly.
right. So sometimes you can just literally like, is this true? Do I really believe this? And then, yes, am I okay to proceed this way? Just bringing it a little bit more front and center to into our awareness. I think it really starts and ends there.
You know what I've also realized is that I can't remember where exactly I read it, but somebody was saying that, like you were saying, critical thinking requires a series of steps to reach to a conclusion. And because it takes so much effort and so much research in order for you to come to that conclusion, it becomes it started to it became I'm sorry, it became too much for us to handle, and in order to go with the times of how it demanded us to respond, we chose to go with our intuition, with that series of experiences that we gather throughout time, in order to make or conclude that because this is similar to all the other experiences that I've had, therefore, this must be this. And boom, you make a decision at that moment. Whether it's the right one or the wrong one, you have used your little database of biases and or experiences to make a decision. And then if you think about it, at the same time, coming to this point where, like you say, having that glimpse of a moment made us take a decision of whether to decide if this person is or not is a valuable person of society to belong to in society. It again, it saves us time, right? We immediately go into that database and we just put her in that box and done, we're done. So I think it has become part of our lazy behavior. And sorry if anybody gets offended, but in reality, that's what we are coming to.
Yeah,
It
well, it's
not wanting to give a little bit of effort into deciding whether it's an emotion that is leading me to this decision. Is it the moment that I'm having at this moment? Maybe you're having too much fun, because maybe if you were not having too much fun, you would have not said yes to this situation. And so we have to analyze every single thing that we are experiencing at that moment that is making us take that decision, or having that impulsivity of choosing whether yay or nay, right?
right.
So
Yeah, you're right. They are shortcuts. They are just these models that have been trained internally through experience, through common sense as it floats around in our culture, teachings from others, from our parents, and so on. And it's these shortcuts, and these shortcuts are because it requires enormous brain power to think. And our brain does everything to not think. And if it can take a shortcut, why not take a shortcut? Especially if there are patterns that it sees over and over and over. It's actually quite interesting. We have talked a lot in coaching in general about our internal model, and our internal model is essentially the way that we see the world and us in it. One thing here to also understand that if we perceive something, we see something, we hear something through our senses, okay, it gets passed through this model before it ever really reaches our awareness. So you might not have seen everything that there is to see, or we might have gotten triggered by something that might not really be as big in the actual reality that exists, that is perceived. And I think that is also something, that the way we see reality is not necessarily reality as it is. It has already been processed. It has already been, there has already been, some things have shrunk, some things have been made to seem more important. And so be aware of that, if Sandra and Claudia see the exact same thing, we might actually talk about it very differently. We might have gotten triggered or not differently, because Sandra sees it through her mental model, thank you, and I see it through my mental model. And we see different things, from the outside world into the way that we can actually talk about it, and the way that we can actually think about it has already been omissions, distortions, generalizations. All that stuff has already happened without us thinking about it or doing anything about it. So, there's a lot there. And again, I think that I want to reiterate what I said before, is that when we pass judgment or evaluate, not necessarily pass judgment, but when we evaluate a scenario or a person, it says more about us than it says about them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And now I understand it. Now, believe it or not, that has taken a whole different meaning for me. So thank you for saying that.
Okay. Why?
Well, because, when you hear phrases, when you hear, what our parents tell us and how we grow up and all this advice and everything else, you don't have enough life experience to have enough to say, what you're telling me, Mother, is so valuable that I'm going to take it with me, and I'm never going to do this again. But as you start having more awareness, more knowledge, and you start expanding and growing and even expanding your language, right? Because it's a form of communication and understanding. Once you start expanding mentally and intellectually, you start evaluating those kind of words. You find the purpose as to why those words came to happen, and then you're like, oh my God, after you reach say, I've had enough experiences to say that these words are true. Oh my God.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you, Mom.
Yes.
And oh my God, she actually knew about this. Gee whiz, I didn't pick up on the nuances. And that also, read a book again that you read 20 years ago. and you
Yeah.
will read it completely differently. You bring different life experiences, different cultural experiences to it, and you will be able to evaluate / judge, things very, very differently.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so sorry here. I have this prompt that keeps popping up and I want it gone. I'm so sorry.
That's
So
all right.
It's these models continue to be trained, and the more we are aware, the more we can kind of refine the way that we think about things. In the end, we learn to, or we have at our disposal a box of crayons with many more colors.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the beginning, we might, when we look at certain things, just have a box of 12, like your basic, like 12 packs of colors, right? And then, but as you become more attuned to evaluating things with maybe more cultural awareness and a more open mind, all of a sudden you sit there with the 144 pack, like all the blues and all the greens and all the shades of red and orange. The boxes, right?
Oh, yes.
You don't need to be a child to enjoy those, by the way.
Oh, no.
I only need to reach over here to have mine. But in any case, it's really like that. So what do I know about this person? When that comes, and when you go and you get this quintessential first impression, which is like, the mother lure of this jumping to conclusion type thing. You see somebody walk towards you, you pick up on this is how they're styled, how they're dressed, how they smile, their energy, their how they show up. Even if it's on Zoom, it's like, how do they come across with their energy? Even, is their lighting good? Did they care enough about me
Your
for having
presence,
a reasonable setup that's not shaky, bad quality cell phone footage or something like that? All these things, all these inputs, you need like a second or two to already make your first snap decision. The slice of reality that sets the stage for everything that comes after. And I would just encourage people to be aware that that's happening more and more, and then not to take it as gospel. Not to, this is how that person is, and I am going to stick to my interpretation, my split-second interpretation from here until eternity. But refine it, change it, nix it, right? And go like that, and see, this is just my prototype, maybe my prototype impression. And then we go from there. I think that it's quite important. And I mean, I have, for instance, been overweight all my life. Okay, I was already overweight as a baby, as a toddler. It has been with me all my life, and I cannot tell you how often that has impacted first impressions people had of me. Because they saw that, and it was already, you were already boxed in, you're fat and lazy, right? Never mind that I had real, like, health issues behind it, and that there was just stuff that I couldn't necessarily do that much about, how this stuff was. But it was, and sometimes you would even think that some people would be more enlightened about the issue, like doctors. Guess what? Doctors were the worst.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how often I have heard, just eat less and exercise, and it's all in your head. Yeah. I mean, after having met me like 30 seconds ago, immediately, not even, giving a chance to do, because even doctors have the bulk of their patients might very well fall into a certain category. And in their practice, they might very well deal with a certain type of person day in, day out for a majority of the cases. And I think we have to stay open to the fact that there's exceptions to every rule. We have to be open and maybe a bit curious and do some detective work to see whether or not, it really fits the mold. If our mold is correct for all cases. So do not think that certain people, because of their profession or whatever, should be more enlightened than others. We're all just people. Yeah. So did you ever have situations maybe where a first impression didn't go all that well?
I think I would have to, the most recent one, I'm going to talk about the most recent one where I went to the doctor. I'm pretty sure I've had others, but I can only think about this one. So I was complaining with the doctor that I was feeling a little bit overweight, and I was doing a couple of things and, they were not working. So I was asking for him to give me some suggestions. And this is here in Saudi Arabia. And the doctor turns to his nurse and says, me being there, tells the nurse, she probably sits there eating bonbons all day and watching TV. And she's complaining that she is a little bit overweight. And my reaction was to give the doctor the benefit of the doubt and smile a little, because at that moment, you do not know what to do. You're thinking, this is a joke, right? This has got to be a joke. He's going to turn around and laugh and say, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, please, ma'am, and be serious. I get it. You have a 5-second moment, and I'm expecting for him to tell me, I'm sorry, I was just joking. And I would have probably said, okay, but don't let it happen again, right? And he did that. And then I looked at him. He's laughing. He is laughing like he had just said the best joke ever. And he turns around and looks at me. And I tell him, I don't even like bonbons. And he just does this. And he's like, well, I'm just saying that probably you're eating too much. Like, I'm thinking, this man has no filters. And I'm not expecting that from a doctor. When you're going to the doctor because you want to know what's happening, right? But you're not there to be judged, which is totally different. Yeah, you're there to have a correction in your course to tell me, hey, look, all you need to do is, I will recommend you to a nutritionist. She will put you in, I don't know, in a month or 3 months in your ideal weight, and don't worry about it. You're okay, and move on, right? But no, you're there being disrespected because talking about you in front of you is a sign of disrespect. Laughing at you without having any awareness, like we've been talking about, of who you are, what you do in your private life, and about it like if he knew me.
Right. And I think that it even goes so far sometimes, and thank you for your story, is that if you then try to have a conversation about this first impression, they're going to tell you that you're a liar.
Mm-hmm.
If their first impression says she is somebody who just sits there watching TV and snacking all day long, if that is the truth, the conclusion that they have come to, then if you try to refute that, you're a liar and they don't believe you. Correct. And it's all just like a bad excuse and so on. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people like that around. And We all have to deal with them. On the other hand, and I come back to what I said before, what he said about you said more about him than it said about you. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It said he's a judgy doctor. He said it said he doesn't have a filter. He might be looking down on women. Whatever it is that you might conclude from this exchange. But it's more about him, the way that he communicates, the way that he judges, the way that he engages and reacts says quite a lot about the person doing the judging, and not so much the judgee, right? Of course, as well, but and everybody's going to make their own decisions anyway.
Yes.
So this is interesting, and we do. There's many things that factor into these first glance decisions that we do. Appearance plays a very big role. The way that we're dressed, clothing, grooming, whatever, right? Because it gives first indications maybe about social status, about preferences. If somebody is really decked out in very stylish modern clothes, that's a very different expression than somebody wearing sweats, or somebody being absolutely super casual, right? So appearance says a lot about it. A big one in the room, of course, related to that is race and ethnicity. And here we go into one very big, broad thing of shortcuts that exists in the world, and that is stereotypes. Stereotypes also are a form of mental shortcut. This person is Indian, therefore ABC, right? If this person seems to be Asian, the Asian girl with glasses, therefore ABCDE. It's kind of like a super shortcut mechanism, algorithms there. Be very aware of that. And culture plays a very big thing. And I hope that everybody who's been listening to our show knows by now that culture transcends nationalities. Okay. So age, I think, would be another one. Gender. So essentially all these things that go into culture groups. We talked about characteristics of culture groups, and there's all these things that make these things. Then of course the social context in which we observe the person. Right? Is this person, meeting you in a boardroom, or is this person meeting you at a dive on some weird like street corner somewhere, right? I mean, it all plays into all these kind of things. So all of that triggers kind of these assumptions that we make about a person, and triggers this kind of
correct. Right. Well, let me close the circle on the story of this lady. And remember, I told you that I had just had some drinks. Well, it is possible that the alcohol heightened, my perception of what I was looking at. For me, I remember that she had a good haircut, and me coming back like 2 weeks later to see the video, I realized that she didn't have the best of the haircuts as I thought she had, right? That she did have a haircut, but it wasn't that good, that the quality of the video is a little bit grainy, and therefore the ring that I saw could also be a silver, just a simple ring. But because it is placed on the left hand finger for wedding rings, I'm assuming that that's her wedding ring. So I kind of realized how the emotions, the feelings, the how we are at that moment has also so much to do with what we perceive, right?
Yes.
And so that gives a close to that topic where I realized that, I was trying to be so good with this person that the alcohol did not help too much. Yet I still see that I'm not that wrong. There's something still there. And then to finalize the topic of the doctor, if I was some other kind of person, my comeback would have been, well, like you said, well, he's a Saudi. That would have been my worst answer ever, worst conclusion ever, really, because that would have put him in a box in my mind. And therefore, by saying he is a Saudi, I'm putting every single Saudi in that box. And that would have been the worst thing ever for a person that is in the cultural, in the IQ field, right? So EQ, I'm sorry. Oh, EQ,
No,
EQ.
CQ.
The EQ.
ICQ.
ICQ field.
Intercultural intelligence, people.
There you go. See, okay, it's another and intercultural field. And so I've learned enough to know that it was just him, and it's just that person. It has not to do with he's a doctor, his nationality, the color of his skin. It has nothing to do. It's just him. That's it. And thank that helped me move on, because I just said, okay, whatever, I'll change doctor. And that's it. That's the solution. You don't like something, it doesn't align with you. You've taken the time to analyze it, and you've concluded that he is not going to be the best thing for you. So therefore you move on. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
slice you have for us.
Yes, so we have just a few minutes here. We had an interesting encounter during our last week's show. I don't know if you happen to see it. So here's a little bit of the backstory on this. We're still relatively new to all this, and being in the field that we are, and giving maybe too many people the benefit of the doubt, we in order to encourage participation, have shared the Zoom link for these meetings, these live meetings. On LinkedIn, and I think on occasion also on YouTube. And so because we know a lot of coaches, we know a lot of people who are intercultural trainers and so on, it would be really nice to have them part of this discussion. And so last week, somebody came that didn't quite gel so much. So I made just like a very brief video thing here for us. Let me just share my screen real quick, just for a second.
Warning, everybody, please, if you're sensitive to this kind of material, please, it's a good time for you to say goodbye.
It's all blurred. It's all good. Yes. No problem. Welcome to FreudenFreude, up to the middle of March 2020. Oh. Do you hear the audio?
No. It stopped, actually.
It stopped. Welcome to FreudenFreude. Up to the middle of March 2023, we kind of invited people to join us, encouraging participation on the show. Sometimes it doesn't exactly work out the way that you want. And this is what happened in our March 15, 2023 show. Enjoy. Somebody is coming. Why would we? Hi, John. Feel free to turn your camera on. Feel free to join in. Otherwise, take your time and just
enjoy. Oh my God, me trying to keep a straight face.
Oh my God. People, this was live. Okay, so that kind of puts a damper on things. I'm going to report him to Zoom later. So sorry.
Yes.
I did not know which button to push that quick. So
yeah, I had to figure it out.
oh, crazy people. So now let's take this.
That's a
What does this person get out of this, really? Right? And I'm going to figure out how to delete
dopamine.
this.
Dopamine.
Right? But it's like, yeah.
LinkedIn. This is on LinkedIn. How could you do that? Or YouTube?
Yeah. So let's do this and say that. Oh my God.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So just to give a little bit of the background here, he was on for a total of 12 seconds. I think we had quite a good reaction here in order to find the right buttons to push. But so you had this person in the throes of his ecstasy, very explicit, very in your face. And, for us, it threw us a little bit. I think that we did pretty well to continue with the show. Overall, show must go on. So kudos for our being live capabilities here. We have already adapted quite a bit, which is nice.
Right.
But we had some very strong initial impressions about this.
Oh, yes.
Person. And I think that also just the like you said before, the state that we were in experiencing that was, the shock of seeing it so unexpectedly and out of context. Okay, because there's nothing more like even-keeled and good-natured and coaches having a discussion, right, about their favorite topics and things like that. So we were kind of like cruising along, kind of in the flow, and then something like that. What was your experience like for the rest of the show and thereafter, maybe?
I can tell you that my focus was on trying to keep it cool. That's the truth, because I realized how I felt a little bit mentally just everywhere. It was a little bit chaotic for me to put myself back together and keep it cool. It's not something that you expect, but like you said, it was an experience, and it lets me know now that we are taking the necessary steps to avoid for this to happen, right? And that, two, it's still a human being that has a certain need that, although it doesn't go with our living of life, of beliefs and values and all that kind of stuff, this is what works for him. And that's it. It's again, for me, it's just a person that had a moment of weakness. Maybe he does that. That's what he gets off on. But I realized that you helped me put myself together because you had a better reaction than I did. For me, it was like I felt like a little girl, but then, I'm being silly. I'm trying to laugh it out because that's my reaction. I'm trying to laugh on things that feel offensive because that's what I used to do in the past. Mm-hmm. Now that I have a better understanding and better values and all this kind of things that help me get through life, these kind of things give me a better perspective of what I need to do next time, which is, hey, it happens, let it go, boom, that's it. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I have to say, not about the person, but about how or what can I do next time. That's what I put me. Yeah, that's what's
interesting. Yeah, so it is quite interesting because it also, first of all, when we get into such unexpected situations where we have to jump to a conclusion quickly, Because if something like this happens, a big broadcasting fail, this goes live to YouTube, okay? And so how you need to come to a split second recognition of what's happening and then try to navigate around it gracefully. That's not the moment to really think about first impressions and do we give him the benefit of the doubt or not, or is our first impression wrong?
There was no time for that.
You have no time for that. You just try to move on. And incidentally, on last week's live stream, I just cut that portion out, those 12 seconds altogether. It was the easiest thing to do in the YouTube editor. So the thing is too that based on our initial emotional charge, in this case, surprise, maybe a touch of disgust, whatever it would be for any person watching this, it also is already one of these like no thinking reactions, right? If a person, and I'm not saying you because, I'm like using a fictitious person. If a fictitious person were to react with disgust because maybe they come from a culture where exhibitionist sex is prohibited and where porn is taboo and all those kind of things, right, might react much more strongly with disgust than maybe somebody from a culture where it's kind of like not as frowned upon. Or, and we said that culture transcends nationality, right? You might be from a group of friends that watches porn together, I don't know. You might be in a culture group where that's absolutely fine. And you're like, oh, look at that. That's interesting.
You can do that?
No, but I'm talking about fictitious people here, right? So based on what you're used to and which culture groups you belong to and the rules in those culture groups, whether it's big no, whether it's kind of okay, whether it's actually interesting or fun, right? So all these kind of things already play into your initial like split second emotional response as well. Not only about what do I know about this person or what can I assume about this person and this situation, but also what's my first like expression emotionally, like disgust, sadness, anger, fear, it doesn't matter. How do I react? And all of that plays then into, what do we think about this person? For me, it's like, okay, he gets off on that. And isn't it sad that this is what he has to resort to? That was my personal, I'm not stereotyped. That was my personal thing. Isn't it sad? He doesn't have somebody else to do this with. And, it's comfortable in the back of a car and, all these kind of things. And so for me, it was just like, okay, poor guy, but now don't just do my show and let's go on. Right. And so all of these things play together. You could actually get really angry about this dude coming in and disrupting the show. I'm a bit more good-natured than that. So yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, once we finished the show, I went running to my husband. I bent over and I started laughing and I told him about it. And he looks at me and he's like, oh my God, are you girls okay? That's when I realized I was like, oh, he was so worried about me. And, I had to laugh it. I had to laugh at it because otherwise, what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah, but was it a genuine laugh or was it a nervous laugh still?
I would say it was a nervous laugh. It was a reaction to something unexpected, right? And but that was it, because then I came back and I thought about it and I was like, and then I stopped laughing because again, it's not something that you know how to react to.
Yeah,
right?
well, in the end, I did not laugh about this person. I never really thought about this person anymore, but I genuinely laughed about the situation.
Okay.
Right? I mean, broadcast failed. This is one for the books. And,
Yes.
I told my husband I showed it to my husband. He started laughing as well because, it's just funny if you think about it. You have these two coaching gals, like doing their little YouTube show that nobody ever shows up with. And then, something like that. The only visitor we had in a while, and this is what we get. So it was funny in that thing. And I think that also brings up a point that it's sometimes very nice to just see stuff with a touch of humor, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, all judgment aside, all split second decisions aside, just like, not taking things all that seriously sometimes is not a bad idea.
Correct. Well, it was fun while it lasted. Now it's time to move on and to take it as something that we're just going to take the appropriate steps for everybody to feel safe.
Yeah. So we had the topic today of what do we know, and maybe I can say / assume about this person. What else do you have to, do you want to add, or shall we conclude it here?
I think we've said really good points, and I took a quick advice from the book Thinking Fast and Slow that I had shared with you. And he does mention that one of the solutions
for the audience, it's by Daniel Kahneman.
Yes, correct. Hopefully you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. And in the first 5 pages of his book, it is full of wisdom. And he does say something that I kind of took it out of the book, where he says that one of the solutions towards using, for example, I'm going to read here a one of the paragraphs. He says, biases of intuition. However, the focus on error does not denigrate human intelligence any more than the attention to diseases in medical texts denies good health. Most of us are healthy most of the time, and most of our judgments and actions are appropriate most of the time. As we navigate our lives, we normally allow ourselves to be guided by impressions and feelings, and the confidence we have in our intuitive beliefs and preferences is usually justified, but not always. We're often confident even when we're wrong, and an objective observer is more likely to detect our errors than we are. And he gives a solution towards this kind of behavior where he says, improve the ability to identify and understand errors of judgment and choice in others and eventually in ourselves by providing a richer and more precise language to discuss them. In at least some cases, an accurate diagnosis may suggest an intervention to limit the damage that bad judgments and choices often cause.
Perfect.
So that for me was kind of like, you don't need to write it. He was, enough, because it is very true. Sometimes we have such limited language that we confuse excitement with fear, right? And we say, oh, I'm fearful, when in reality you are excited. And that changes the whole perspective of the moment, right? And so if we were to use the right words to appropriately give a feeling or an emotion the tag that we want to give it, it would just be a whole different story. So I think that what he is saying is right. And it just got into my head so much that I thought, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work
Yep.
at it better and stronger. And I invite for people to do that. Expand your language, your knowledge, and it will
Draw
be
with
so much better.
draw with more colors. Draw with more colors.
Yes.
To a larger
Right.
color box, and I really think that the prerequisite for all of this and the fundamental stance is the one of awareness. You have to just realize what's going on much more, and realize not only what's going on outside of you, but realize of what's going on inside of you. Your ways of reacting, your ways of judging, your internal model, the more you explore it, the more you can fine tune it, just like a really nice race car. Very good. Well, I think that about said it all. With your permission, let's close it there. And so everybody, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you have any experiences regarding this to share, let's, put it in the comments below, and we'd love to read it and maybe talk about it in an upcoming show. So otherwise, please show us some love, subscribe to the channel, click a like or leave a comment, show us some engagement. That would be wonderful. Otherwise, Sandra, thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia.
It was a pleasure, and we will see everybody again very soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye, Claudia.